It started like any other morning. Quiet, predictable, safe. The kind of morning you don't think twice about. Sunlight spilled through the blinds in thin golden lines, stretching across the floor of my small apartment. The hum of the coffee machine filled the kitchen, steady and comforting, like a routine I had carefully built to keep my life simple, controlled, peaceful. I liked it that way. After everything that had happened 2 years ago, peace wasn't something I took for granted anymore. I grabbed my mug, took a slow sip, and checked my phone. No notifications, just the way I liked it. No unexpected calls, no sudden messages, no reminders of the past. I slipped on my shoes and walked down the hallway to the mailbox, not expecting anything out of the ordinary. Bills, ads, maybe a flyer or two. That's all it ever was. But that morning, it wasn't, because buried between the usual clutter was something different, something that didn't belong. A thick, cream-colored envelope, heavy, formal, intentional. My name was printed on the front in sharp, clean lettering, not handwritten, not casual, precise, cold. And in the top corner, a return address that made my chest tighten instantly. A law firm, not just any law firm. Their law firm, my parents, and just like that, the life I had spent 2 years rebuilding felt like it was about to be pulled apart again. For a moment, I just stood there, holding that envelope, not opening it, not moving, because I knew something most people don't understand. Silence can be a gift. For 2 years, I had lived without them. No arguments, no guilt, no expectations weighing down every decision I made. But it hadn't always been easy. The first few months were the hardest. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart would jump. Every time I saw a notification, I thought, maybe this is it. Maybe they'd apologize. Maybe they'd reach out. Maybe they'd finally understand. But they never did. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and slowly hope faded, replaced by something quieter, something steadier, acceptance. And then eventually, people like to believe that all families are built on love, that no matter what happens, there's always something holding it together. But that's not always true. Sometimes family is built on control. In my house, love was conditional. It came with rules, unspoken contracts, invisible expectations that you were never allowed to question. Be who they wanted, do what they said, follow the path they chose, and everything would be fine. But the moment you stepped outside that line, everything changed. My parents didn't see themselves as controlling. In their minds, they were doing what was best for me, guiding me, protecting me up for success. But their version of success wasn't mine. They chose my major, dismissed my interests, mocked the things that made me happy. And every time I tried to push back, they had the same response. We know better. You'll thank us later. You don't understand the real world yet. Over time, something else started to creep into those conversations, something subtle but powerful. They began to remind me of everything they had done for me, the cost of raising me, the sacrifices they had made, the money they had spent. At first, it sounded like frustration. Then it started to sound like accounting, like they were keeping track, like I owed them something. The final argument didn't happen all at once. It built slowly, day by day, until one night it finally broke. Rain pounded against the windows. The house felt smaller than ever. My father stood in the doorway, arms crossed. My mother paced the room, her voice sharp and emotional. You're throwing your life away, she said. All because you think you know better. I remember feeling calm, strangely calm, like something inside me had already made the decision. I'm not throwing anything away, I said quietly. I'm choosing my own life. That's when my father said it cold, final. If you walk out that door, don't come back. No hesitation, no softness, just a line drawn in the sand. And for the first time in my life, I didn't argue. I didn't try to explain because I finally understood something simple. This wasn't a conversation. It was control. So I nodded, turned around, packed a bag, and walked out. 2 years later, that same feeling returned as I stood in my kitchen holding that envelope. The past had found its way back into my life, and it wasn't asking politely. I set my coffee down, sat at the table, and stared at it. Part of me wanted to throw it away, pretend it didn't exist. But I knew better. Ignoring it wouldn't make it disappear. So I opened it. I stared at the page for a long time. The words were clear, too calculated, but they didn't feel real. It felt like I was reading something meant for someone else, not me. Financial reimbursement, outstanding balance. Who writes something like that? Who looks at their own child and sees numbers instead of memories? I flipped the page, then another, and another. Every single expense was listed. Groceries, school supplies, medical, clothes, even vacations, each one carefully labeled, each one assigned a value, as if my entire childhood had been reduced to a spreadsheet. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't random. This wasn't emotional. This was planned. For years, I had tried to understand them, tried to justify their behavior, told myself they're trying their best. They don't know any better. But sitting there holding that document, I saw the truth, clearer than ever. This wasn't love. It was control. Always had been. Even their kindness came with conditions. Even their support had a price. And now they were finally saying it out loud. At first, I felt something tight in my chest. Anger. Not loud, not explosive, but deep, quiet, the kind that sits heavy in your stomach. But then something shifted. The more I read, the more ridiculous it became. The wording, the structure, the idea itself. And suddenly, I laughed. Loud, sharp, unexpected. It echoed through my apartment like it didn't belong there. Because, honestly, it didn't. Nothing about this situation made sense anymore. It had crossed the line from painful to absurd. I sat back in my chair, still holding the paper. And for the first time, I wasn't hurt. I wasn't scared. I wasn't even angry. I was amused. Because think about it. They spent 2 years not speaking to me. 2 years of complete silence. And this was how they chose to come back. Not with an apology, not with a conversation, but with an invoice. It was so out of touch that it felt like something out of a bad movie. The laughter faded slowly, and what replaced it was understanding, not forgiveness, not sympathy, understanding, because now everything made sense. Why every decision had to go through them, why every disagreement turned into guilt, why every gift felt like an obligation. This wasn't new. It was just exposed. I flipped to the last page again and read the final paragraph carefully. If no response is received within 30 days, legal action may be pursued. There it was, the real purpose. Not money, fear. They weren't expecting payment. They were expecting a reaction, a response, a way back in. That night, I didn't respond. I didn't panic. I didn't even think about paying. Instead, I sat there in silence, thinking. For the first time, I wasn't reacting emotionally. I was looking at it logically. And logically, it made no sense. So the next morning, I did something simple. I called a lawyer. The office was quiet, professional, neutral, nothing like the chaos I had left behind 2 years ago. I handed him the document, watched him read. His expression barely changed at first. Then slowly, a small smile appeared. Not mocking, not rude, just knowing. He looked up at me and said, "You don't owe them anything." Simple, clear, final. I felt something inside me loosen, something I didn't even realize I had been holding on to. "They can't legally charge you for raising you," he continued. "It doesn't work like that." The entire weight of that document disappeared. Walking out of that office felt different, lighter, not because the situation had changed, but because my perspective had. For years, I had been trying to prove something to them, to myself, to anyone who would listen. But now there was nothing left to prove. That night, I opened my laptop, blank screen, no emotions this time, no anger, no sadness, just clarity. And I started typing, "I have reviewed your claim with legal counsel. There is no legal basis for your request. I will not be making any payments. Any further attempts to contact me in this manner will be considered harassment." I read it once, twice, then hit send, no hesitation. Days passed, then a week, then another. But this time, I wasn't waiting the same way. There was no anxiety, no anticipation, because the outcome didn't matter anymore. They didn't have power over me. Not anymore. Several other women where he had abused them or just was violent. When I was reading about this, they said that at some point, allegedly, he may have dated a guy, and at some point he had stabbed this guy. It's not funny. It's just awkward because that was all the information I could find. So he may have dated a guy and stabbed him. And then moving on. I was okay. All right. What was that about though? Just not any information I could find. So by October of 2019, Wade was dating a woman named Melissa Montanez. And just follow me on this journey because I had a lot of questions. I was like, what? This doesn't make sense. But just this is what happened. Okay. On October 6th, Wade and Melissa, they're dating. They decided to go out to the club in Fort Myers, and it's called Buddha Live. Buddha Live. And while they're there, Wade, he meets this guy named Jason Shepard. Now, I guess they did not know each other before this evening, Jason and Wade. But the two seemed to hit it off. I'm sure it's something drug related, in my opinion, allegedly. I don't know. But this Jason guy, he invites Wade and Melissa back to his place. Melissa's like, I don't want to go. I don't know this guy. I don't want to go. So she's like, no, I'm not going. Well, Wade, he really wanted to go and he did not like her answer. So he's like, you know what? Fine. And he ends up taking Melissa's car and technically stealing it. So he steals her car and then he meets up with this woman